How to get IELTS Band 8 to 9 in speaking and writing. Topic 3. Children and families. (52) Foster parents. People who have children living in their existing family for a fixed period, with their original parents' agreement. Example: being a foster parent is a difficult and tiring role, I can imagine. 53. Guardians. People who are legally appointed to protect a child's interests in the absence of parents. Example: in some countries, the government appoints a guardian if the parents die or experience severe difficulties. 54. Role models. People that children look up to and respect as good examples. Example: in some countries, the royal family are good role models for youngsters, although in other cases, this is not the case. 55. Ground rules. Basic rules governing the way people can behave in a situation. Example: during the school holidays, my parents had strict ground rules for what we could do outside. 56. Conventions. Traditions or social norms that most people follow. Example: it's a convention for grandparents to live with their children in many countries. 57. Codes of conduct. Voluntary rules which people accept in a situation. Example: the Boy Scouts have a firm code of conduct, which seems to be a positive influence. 58. Bullying. When children attack and intimidate other children. Example: bullying could be reduced through better awareness and positive peer pressure in schools. 59. Truancy. When a pupil leaves school without permission. Verb: to play truant from school. Example: I must confess that at secondary school, I sometimes played truant and went to the park with my friends. 60. Delinquency. Minor crime, often by young people. Example: delinquency is a huge problem in urban areas, especially when policing is minimal. 61. Abduction. The crime of taking or kidnapping people for a criminal reason. Example: child abduction is a great concern for many parents, especially in South America. 62. Peer pressure. The pressure from people in the same group to act in a certain way. Example: many children start smoking due to peer pressure or bad role models. 63. Dual income. A family where both the father and mother work. Example: in many countries, the dual income family is the norm nowadays. 64. Breadwinner. The person who earns all or most of the money in a family. Example: in some families, the father is still the only breadwinner. 65. Child minding. Caring informally, not in schools, for children when parents are busy or working. Example: in some countries, the state subsidizes the cost of child minding. 66. After-school child care. Caring for children in a school setting as above. Example: many families rely on after-school child care because both parents work and commute. 67. Viable. Practical and possible to achieve. Example: it's not really viable to expect all children to get maximum grades in exams. 68. Peers. People in the same group or level as yourself. Example: many of my peers from school are now working for charities. 69. Bonding. The development of close emotional connections between people. Example: festivals and parties are an ideal time for families to bond. 70. Patterns of behavior, ways of acting and doing things, either positive or negative. Example, unfortunately, some children absorb dangerous patterns of behavior when watching movies or playing computer games. 71. Well brought up. To bring up children. To raise and educate them in your own moral, behavioral, or religious conventions. Example, I was brought up in a very religious family, and I seem to have absorbed their values. Topic 3. Children and families. Nobody can deny that parental influence is important for children, at least in cases where children live with their parents, foster parents, or guardians. However, it is by no means clear that children should spend time exclusively in the family, as we will see. On the one hand, it may appear advisable for parents to act as role models and to establish ground rules for behavior by spending as much time as possible with their children. This allows the youngsters to absorb conventions and codes of conduct, which they can follow themselves, hopefully leading to an absence of problems such as bullying, truancy, and delinquency later on. Furthermore, being with the family should reduce the risk of children falling victim to crimes such as abduction or coming under the influence of negative peer pressure. On the other hand, we have to ask whether this is a practical proposition in a society where many families are dual income, or where one parent's role as breadwinner means he or she is away from the family for long periods. It is inevitable that children cannot spend all their time with the family. Child minding and after-school childcare are often used in these cases, and if managed properly, these can be perfectly viable alternatives. Equally, it seems that children can in some cases learn a considerable amount from their peers in addition to adults, and allowing them to play without direct supervision may be a benefit. To conclude, it appears that while family time is essential for bonding and absorbing patterns of behavior, there are definite advantages when children are outside the family too. This is provided that they are in a safe, well-behaved environment with peers who are themselves reasonably well brought up. Topic 4. Nature, the environment, and energy. Water contamination is a serious form of pollution, and one that can be challenging to rectify. There seem to be two main causes involved, and a variety of damaging effects on people and the biosphere, which we will discuss here. Probably the main factor is the issue of emissions from cars, factories, and other human activities. These emissions contain damaging pollutant particles, which can contaminate rainwater runoff, and thus enter the water cycle by transferring through the water table into aquifers, streams, and rivers. Filtration and processing are not really viable options for such large volumes of water, and so the water table remains tainted with these elements over long periods, as we see in Eastern Europe today. In situations where soil erosion and logging have already damaged the local environment, the accumulation can be very serious. The other major cause is accidental or deliberate dumping of waste products in places outside of controlled landfills or waste processing centers. Even small amounts of abandoned waste can enter water supplies through the ground, often undetected. The effects on animal life can be severe, especially for species which are already endangered by such threats as poaching, habit loss, and food chain disruption. Contaminated water can lead to dwindling numbers or even potential extinction, as may indeed happen to the Asian tiger populations. The impact on human society can also be distressing, including the poisoning of drinking water, famine, or drought due to lack of safe irrigation, and long-term loss of land, as we see, for example, after the Bhopal poisoning catastrophe in India. Such effects tend to have an especially grave impact on the very poorest in society, with the least resources to counter the environmental effects. Overall, we see that emissions and dumping are the main origins of the problem, and that the effects on both humans and animals are exacerbated by the existing environmental, criminal, or social problems.